Stangibelisco here on a fine summer day. It's about 10:30 in the morning on the 26th of June, 2017, in the black holes of Dakota Territory, United States of addiction. I told you in a previous video in my ongoing series of drugalogs and drunkalogs that I wasn't going to burden you with my experience in 1987 drinking on top of Valium. I specifically remember the drug was being used for alcohol withdrawal, easing the symptoms of alcohol withdrawal, and as such it was used in the short term, not the long term, so the addictive effects of Valium itself were less likely to occur. Now this was, you have to keep in mind, 30 years ago. In fact, it was just about 30 years ago right now. I was kicked out of apartment after apartment for continually relapsing in my drinking escapades, and they were bad ones. I really turned into a completely different person, some kind of a wild, unearthly beast when I was drinking. It's amazing I didn't get killed. I could have been killed 6 or 8 different times in 3 or 4 different ways. Somehow, by the grace of the higher powers, I was deemed fit to remain on this earth and was saved. And nothing but that could have possibly saved me from the depths of that alcoholism. In any case, I was withdrawing on Valium and had been kicked out of the most recent place that I lived in, so I stayed in a motel somewhere in Florida. I will not disclose the specific location, but I don't know if I even remember the name of the town. But I started drinking again, relapsing, despite the fact that I was taking Valium to ease the withdrawal symptoms. Valium, also known as Diazepam, a benzodiazepine. And the dosages that they use for alcohol withdrawal, I guess, are quite a lot higher than the dosages that they use for ordinary anxiety disorders, if you don't have alcohol withdrawal involved. Because alcohol withdrawal could become tremendously severe. I even had one case of bona fide delirium tremens in 1987. Maybe it was late in 1986. But in any case, I drank on top of Valium. I relapsed my alcohol while I was taking the Valium. All of a sudden, well, it seemed all of a sudden to me, I was on the floor. And it was something like 8 hours later, just instantly, just like that. Nothing happened. I was standing just like I would be talking to you, and the next thing you know, I was on the floor in this motel room, all bruised and cut up. And huge objects had been thrown around the room. I had taken the mattress off of a king-size bed and thrown it across the room. It must have been me, because there was nobody in the room but me. And other things had been hurled about as if someone had had a fit of rage. But I don't remember a bit of it. I don't remember feeling anything. One moment I was standing there drinking some vodka or gin, my drinks of choice, straight out of the bottle, of course. And the next thing you know, I was on the floor. But it was hours later. I could tell by the clock. When I got up, it seemed as if I had broken my right arm, because my right arm was not functioning and it was hanging limp, as if it were broken. So I went into the emergency room of the local hospital. As a matter of fact, this was Sarasota Memorial Hospital. and I went into their emergency room, and their doctor at Sarasota Memorial Hospital had seen me before, and he blew his stack. He said, "Someday, Stanley, I ought to just let you die." He really had a tantrum. He was furious at me, and with good reason. I mean, here's this guy repeatedly comes in. He's trying to kill himself, right? Must be. And again, I didn't succeed. But when they looked at that arm, they told me, uh-oh, there's a good chance that you're going to have kidney failure and die. And I said, what? That can't possibly be. What had happened was that I had crushed my arm and cut off the blood circulation for hours, so long that the tissue in my entire right arm, shoulder down, was starting to die, and the metabolism products of all of that tissue death were passing through my kidneys. And that's why they told me I might have kidney failure and it could be fatal. They gave me a drug called Demerol for the pain, and a few minutes later I said, "Does Demerol make you vomit?" And the response to that was to stick a tray under my mouth. Obviously it could, right? But I escaped that fate. Nevertheless, they kept me on Demerol, more or less high on Demerol, for about 3 days. And then they discontinued it. The pain was horrific. The Demerol eased the pain, but when it came back, it was something like I had never imagined possible in that right arm. It was as if it had been sanded off and then stuck into some volatile liquid like alcohol or gasoline. It just indescribably horrible. And the Demerol caused me to hallucinate on top of the alcohol. Fortunately, I did not suffer kidney failure, but they still figured that I might very well lose that arm. And in the ensuing weeks, my right arm puffed up to the size of my leg, and they did all kinds of therapies and things to try and get the fluid out of that arm. I laid in the hospital. It must have been a month I was in the hospital. And gradually, the alcohol and Valium withdrawal took their course, and I was sober, at least as sober as you can be, and after that amount of alcohol abuse. And I was conscious of what was going on around me, and the hallucinations had quit. I saw hundreds and hundreds and thousands of cockroaches crawling all over the walls and all over the bed and all over everything except me. And I remember saying to myself, high on Valium and still withdrawing from alcohol, well, this is Sarasota Memorial Hospital. What do you expect, you know? I mean, that's just par for the course here. We weren't crawling on me, so I really figured, well, as long as they stay off me, I don't have a problem, right? And all of this sort of delusions and hallucinations. Gradually, it dawned on me that, and they told me that they did not know how to deal with this problem. They'd never seen an injury like it before. They didn't know what to do. And I suggested that I go to the Mayo Clinic, which is in my hometown of Rochester, Minnesota. And the doctor, who still was very angry with me, said, "I think that's an excellent idea." And so we made arrangements, and one thing led to another, and I spent months in rehab with tremendous pain. And they said, "Oh, this is called a crush injury," and they seemed to know just what to do with it. But I went through a whole lot of rehab therapy for the arm. And gradually, over the course of 1987, they let me out of the hospital. I went home to stay with my parents, who were kind enough to take me in. And gradually, I began to get the use of that arm back. And I knew as soon as I could move that arm, that it was going to come back. I just knew it was coming back as long as I could stay clean. And I did. I stayed clean, except for one relapse a year later. But that only lasted about 3 days, and I said, I got just as bad as I'd ever been, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't drink anymore, ever. But I drank on top of a benzodiazepine, and my reward was the most horrific pain and the most trying medical experience I've ever had in my life. I was 33 years old, turned 34 in September of 1987, and I stayed with my parents until the following spring, the following summer. By the following summer, 1988, I had recovered the use of that arm enough so that I won the 1,000-yard freestyle swimming race in my age group in the Masters category for Minnesota. I was champion, 1,000-yard freestyle with this arm that they said I might never use again. And the reason I won the race was because I was the only person in that age group who swam it. I was the only person with the gall to swim the 1,000-yard freestyle in the 30 to 34 age group. I don't know why. I mean, it's not that far. And then my time was nowhere near impressive, but I won because I was the only one. And that proved something to me, too. You can't win if you don't try. You know what I mean? And all this is just sort of like a drunk-a-log, drug-a-log story, but I hope that it offers some of you, number one, hope that you can recover from the worst of addictions, and I hope I can from this clonazepam. It's not happened yet, but I'm on the road to it, I hope. And number two, what was number two? I forget that. Number one, you can get off it, and number two, miracles do happen. Miracles do happen. And I haven't had a drink since Labor Day of 1988, and God willing, I never will again. But you can't say about alcoholism, about that disease. One relapse, and I am just that far away from where I was on that dreadful July night in 1987. And seeing as I'm taking a benzodiazepine right now, it only compounds the danger. Do not drink on top of benzodiazepines. And I have been looking at threads, forums, discussing the comparisons and which benzo is better than which, and people are lightheartedly tossing around things like, oh, I take a couple of Valiums and then have a little drink on top of that, and I feel great. And clonazepam is the worst, they say, a lot of them. And then they get the half-lives wrong, they get them reversed, a lot of their facts are wrong compared to what I read in the bona fide tables. A lot of misconceptions out there, but this was no misconception. This really happened. It may not happen to you if you drink on top of a benzodiazepine. Are you willing to take the risk? Years later, I saw that same doctor who performed surgery on the arm to repair the nerves, because the nerves had been damaged, and he did something to help the nerves. And I asked him, am I ever going to use this arm again? And he said, it's possible. Probably. But years later, in the Rochester airport, when I was flying back to South Beach, Miami, where I lived at the time, great place for a guy who tries to stay sober, right? Well, I did. I stayed sober there for 5 years. But the doctor, that surgeon, came up to me quietly. He happened to run into me in that airport, and he said, you know, we didn't think you ever would move that arm again. We thought your arm was lost. All those years had gone by, 4 or 5 years, I guess, at that time, 6 maybe. And he told me that, in fact, I was an awful lot worse off than I had ever dreamed that I really was, which was bad enough. And here I am today, halfway off the clonazepam. Wish me luck, because I'm going to need it from what I've read on the forums. That clonazepam is one of the most difficult to get off of. Well, I'm halfway there. And like I said before, I can get off of all these addictive drugs. I'm an expert at it. I've done it 100 times. Now, I just need to pray to my higher power that I can do it 101 times. Stan Gibilisco signing off. I hope that leaves you, if you're in distress now with any of these addictive substances, I hope that leaves you with a sense of destiny. You can, in fact, recover. And, given the grace of God, so shall I. So long for now.